Thanks for clicking on the Wayne.com sports page for this Labor Day version of Inside the Zone. We are 3 weeks.
We still have to labor.
We still have to labor, but that's just for your viewing pleasure, everybody out there in cyberspace. 3 weeks into the season now, and we've kind of gotten a better handle on exactly what teams are, what teams aren't, what teams need to work on, what teams have things in place. And one of the most interesting matchups here in Week 4, Bishop Dwenger at Homestead, in part because we didn't know what Dwenger was going to have. They had a bunch of skill guys coming back. Amon Clark's now back in the picture, coming off that 4A state championship, but a different offensive line. Homestead, meanwhile, they lose their star quarterback in Week 1, so we've gotten to see them play without Drew Kazai for a while now. What do you see as being the biggest keys in this game? Because both teams come in undefeated. Well,
I think, Jaya Wright's play is going to be big for Homestead. I think he's done a phenomenal job stepping in place of Drew Kazai and really settled in at that quarterback spot. Jordan Presley gives him a running threat that he can kind of lean on, and the team can lean on, when they need him. So that has helped Jaya really settle in, hasn't had to come in right away and really start slinging the ball all over the place. So as he's grown more comfortable, I think the offense has gotten better. And then I think the defense is making strides as well. And I think they made a lot of plays last week against Bishop Luers to help them win that game. And while they did give up 20-some points, I really think that defense is really what won them the game, because against a team like Luers, you got to get some stops. And I think the Homestead defense stepped up.
Dwenger hasn't been in a lot of close games. The scores have been closer because of the way that the fourth quarter's played out. They brought in some subs, but they've beaten Southside, they've beaten Wayne 38-18, I believe, and then Northside 30-6. So they haven't faced as many tough opponents at this point as Homestead have.
No.
Is that in Homestead's favor, or is Bishop Dwenger maybe a little bit more fresh? Would be the other way to look at it.
Yeah, I think you could go either way, because Bishop Dwenger has probably had the most in terms of being able to find out who they have, where they have it depth-wise. So they probably have their depth figured out after 3 games, whereas some other teams that have had really tough games, 1 or 2 or even 3 the first 3 weeks, probably are still figuring out who they can rely on in terms of reserves. But Dwenger, I still don't know how good Dwenger is. We kind of put Snyder there at 1, Dwenger 2 in the sack, but Dwenger hasn't been tested yet, let's be honest, and Friday is going to be their first test. So I think we learn a lot about Bishop Dwenger coming up Friday night.
When you take a look at Drew Kazai going out in Week 1, we knew Homestead had all 5 starters back on the offensive line. And if you take a look at the passing numbers, it was in, I believe it was in single digits last week in terms of the number of passes Jaya Wright threw against Bishop Luers. So having Jordan Presley and really relying not only on Presley, but on that offensive line, how smart of a move is that for Coach Zolman? Because we think Homestead, in the past decade, guys airing it out, Zach Terrell, Matt Skronig, a number of guys that can air it out at the quarterback position, Logan Laughlin, but really have become a running team since, and that seems to be working out pretty darn well for them.
Yeah, I think even before Kazai went out, they were going to be more of a running team, and Kazai was going to be able to run the ball as well, just because of the youth of that wide receiver core, and it was obviously gutted by graduation. So now when Jaya Wright comes in, who's a good runner in his own right, I think they've leaned even more to the run game, because as Jaya Wright, he's had to get more comfortable running the ball, and then you have a talent like Jordan Presley you can lean on and carry you as well. So it's helped that they have Presley and they have Wright and they have that experienced offensive line that's really helped them establish a run. And we've seen in years past, Homestead struggle running the ball. They've really had to rely on that passing game. More often than not, they're successful at it. They have talent at wide receiver and a quarterback. But when you have balance like that, it really helps you win a lot more games, just because defenses can't key on just one aspect of the offense.
Bishop Dwenger is exactly the opposite. You take a look, they dominated in the trenches last year.
Yep.
They graduated, I should say, all 5 starters on that offensive line. I've seen them in person a couple times, really trying to feel their way out early in the season. But Amon Clark was back last week against Southside. He really broke out last year against Homestead in that huge game. So what can we expect to see from Bishop Dwenger offensively when they get tested a little bit more this week?
Well, I think you can see some balance. Amon Clark being back, obviously he's a huge guy that they can rely on and lean on. And Blake Michelny, his development continues, and I think he's become a very solid quarterback. So in the event they have to pass a lot, I think Blake Michelny is more than capable of doing that. But balance is going to be key for them. I think Bishop Dwenger was fine balance-wise running the ball before Amon Clark came back. But the quality of opponents wasn't there. So now we're really going to be able to see just how balanced that offense can be against a tough team like Homestead.
In your eyes, what's the one thing that's going to change the tide in this game? What's the one thing that's going to be a big factor?
Well, I think quarterback play is going to be big. Turnovers going to be big. How Blake Pichelny versus Jaya Wright. There's going to be a game where Jaya Wright's going to have to win it for Homestead, and whether that's with his arm. I think he's been able to do that with his legs and limiting the turnovers. But he's going to have to make some big plays vertically in a game to win. And that could be Friday. So I think it's going to come down to quarterback play. If Jaya Wright can make some plays against a legitimate, very good Dwenger defense.